Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are wrestling with perhaps the most fundamental and, let's be honest, quite terrifying cybersecurity reality, the idea that the greatest threat often already has the key. We're talking about the insider threat.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
For those listening who might be more focused on external threats,
hmm
the hackers, the 0 days, it's easy to miss this crucial definition. The National Protected Security Authority, the NPSA, they're very clear.
hmm
The insider isn't some external phantom trying to get through the firewall. It's a current or maybe a former employee. It could be a contractor, even a trusted third-party supplier.
Right? Someone you let in.
Precisely.
Sure.
And the critical point is this individual already possesses legitimate access to your systems, your data, and they're positioned to cause, well, severe or material harm. They're inside, sometimes with high-level privileges.
Okay, let's really unpack that distinction because it's fundamental. Our
Yeah.
mission today really is to move way beyond that simplistic image of, a disgruntled employee just smashing a keyboard.
Right, not just pure rage.
Exactly. We want to go deep into the complex, often quite insidious mix of behavioral, psychological, and technical factors that actually drive this malicious insider activity. And we're going to focus particularly on the really high-stakes world of financial services.
And that focus on financial services is, well, it's entirely justified. The stakes there are just astronomical. I mean, insider incidents aren't just operationally disruptive, though they certainly are that.
Sure.
But the real damage, it's financial and reputational. The costs just spiral: direct financial loss, huge regulatory fines. They can honestly cripple a business unit. And maybe worst of all, the complete shattering of public trust.
And when we talk about cost, we're not talking small change. The research we looked at cited figures from, what was it, 2020, where the average cost per insider incident hit something like $11.5 million.
Staggering. And that's the average.
That's the average. We see case studies where the total losses, maybe involving modifying data, deleting critical information, or outright theft, soared as high as $691 million in one single event. It's not just a data breach. It can be genuinely existential for the company involved.
Absolutely existential. And when you quantify that kind of impact, you realize, look, this needs a really holistic approach, which is why we gathered such diverse material for this discussion.
Right.
Our insights today, they're drawn from quite a stack. Academic reviews focusing specifically on the UK financial services sector, intelligence briefs from the FBI and CISA, very practical stuff there, and also those foundational behavioral and technical studies from CERT and the U.S. Secret Service, particularly looking at banking and finance. We're trying to blend the psychological with the procedural, the human with the technical.
And it's so clear as we step into this complex area that organizations desperately need integrated professionals, people who can speak the language of psychology and HR and advanced technical controls. You need experts who get that the human mind is arguably the most critical firewall. So for those of you listening who feel drawn to this vital area where blending that behavioral understanding with technical know-how is absolutely key, we do want to mention our partner, www.securitycareers.help. Securing organizations from the inside really requires a unique and frankly crucial skill set, and that's a great place to explore opportunities to make a genuine difference.
There really is a specialized field.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Motivation. The why. Probably the single most important finding, and this cut across every piece of intelligence we reviewed, is that malicious insider threats are very rarely, if ever, spontaneous.
Almost never just happen on the spur of the moment.
Exactly. They are almost always planned, sometimes meticulously planned in advance.
And that planning phase, that's got to be the crucial element for prevention, right? Because if it's planned, it implies there are, well, observable precursors, things you could potentially spot.
That's the hope, yes.
So if someone's planning sabotage or a massive data theft, they have to take steps that might be visible. But what triggers that planning, you mentioned it, often starts with external pressure, specifically financial distress.
That's very often the primary external stressor, yes. We frequently see a kind of rapid escalation of financial problems. Could be overwhelming debt, maybe bankruptcy looming. Sometimes it's someone trying to maintain an extravagant lifestyle that's just way beyond their salary.
Keeping up appearances.
Right. Or maybe sudden, major, unexpected expenses, huge medical bills, things like that. These pressures create this, well, often desperate need for money. And suddenly, exploiting that legitimate access they have starts to look like an option. A terrible option, but an option.
But, and this is important, the research is really careful to stress that just having financial difficulty, that alone doesn't create an insider threat. I mean, most people facing debt don't suddenly turn malicious.
Absolutely not. That's a critical distinction.
So what is it then? What turns that financial stress into actual malicious action? There has to be some kind of psychological pivot point, doesn't there?
Precisely. And that pivot point is very often what the researchers call the unmet expectation. It's a concept that sounds simple, but is devastatingly effective in explaining this.
Okay, unmet expectation. What does that mean exactly?
It's basically an unsatisfied assumption, an assumption that some organizational action or event, maybe a promotion they felt they deserved, a promised bonus, even just job security will happen or maybe won't happen. And when the employee's internal story, their narrative about their own value or their future in the company, is completely violated by reality.
Like being passed over for that promotion.
Exactly. That's when disgruntlement can rapidly escalate, sometimes towards seeking revenge or retaliation.
This seems like the perfect place to bring in that classic case study. I know it's fictionalized, but it's based on real patterns, the iSemble case study. Ian Archer, it perfectly illustrates this, right? The psychological fallout escalating into actual technical sabotage. Tell us about Archer.
Right. Archer's story is, well, it's textbook in many ways. He was one of the company's original computer specialists. Talented, initially very loyal, and over about 4 years, he basically became the sole sysadmin. He built the company's core mission-critical software from scratch.
So he saw himself as indispensable. Quite rightly, perhaps.
He absolutely did. His expectation was straightforward. As the company grew, he'd naturally step into that senior leadership role, overseeing the very infrastructure he created. It made sense to him.
But that's not what happened.
No. iAssemble grew fast,
Right.
really fast, and they brought in experienced external administrators, people with, formal credentials, management backgrounds, and Archer. He was passed over for the lead system administrator job.
Ouch. That expectation of recognition, status, control, just completely unmet.
Utterly unmet, and the report details this immediate shift in his behavior. He became severely disgruntled, started exhibiting aggressive, resentful behavior toward his new managers, which unsurprisingly eventually led to his termination.
And the termination was the final trigger.
It was. But he was ready. He had already prepared. On the very day he was fired, actually while he was being escorted out of the building, he triggered a logic bomb, something he'd secretly installed weeks before.
Wow.
It detonated about a week later. And it systematically deleted every single mission-critical program he had ever developed for that company. The damage was, well, immense. His motivation was pure vengeance, fueled entirely by that deep, burning sense of betrayal linked to his professional expectation.
That's a chilling example, and it really shows how the perceived slight can lead to proportional or even disproportionate damage. Now, moving beyond that specific trigger, the research also talks about something called personal predisposition. Certain characteristics historically linked to this kind of behavior. What traits did they observe specifically in, say, technical staff who went rogue?
Yeah, this is interesting. For those in high-trust technical roles, researchers identified about 6 specific psychological characteristics that seem to act as internal amplifiers when stress hits.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, often a history of personal or social frustrations, a pattern of feeling misunderstood or slighted. Second, sometimes an unhealthy dependency on computers where their validation comes solely from controlling systems, not people. Third, a high degree of what they call ethical flexibility, basically. They can rationalize breaking rules or policies quite easily.
Makes sense.
Then fourth, reduced loyalty to the institution itself. Fifth, a really profound sense of entitlement, specifically regarding their access or their role. And finally, often a striking lack of empathy, difficulty understanding or caring about the impact of their actions on the organization or, the victims.
Wow, that combination sounds potent. An entitled person, low empathy, high ethical flexibility, you add overwhelming debt and a denied promotion, and suddenly the psychological barrier to acting maliciously just crumbles.
Absolutely. The predisposition kind of sets the stage psychologically.
Yeah.
But it's important to note, motivation isn't always just about direct theft or sabotage. We also see other more complex drivers for disclosure of information.
Right, the sources mention motivations that might, on the surface, look a bit like whistleblowing, even if the intent isn't purely benevolent.
That's a really key distinction. We definitely see strong ideological motivations. Cases where the insider genuinely believes their morals or ethics compel them to disclose sensitive information, maybe to the public or the media.
Mm-hmm.
And this ties directly into something called ethical retaliation theory. Basically, in the insider's mind, they feel morally justified in seeking revenge because they perceive some massive organizational injustice like discrimination, maybe systemic fraud, unethical behavior as the initial wrong that justifies their actions.
So they frame it as justice.
In their mind, yes. And we also see sometimes just the desire for notoriety. Seeking fame or attention can be a huge driver for a really visible disclosure, sometimes even overriding immediate financial gain.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and apply a statistical lens, specifically to banking and finance, using that data from the CERT Secret Service study. When we picture an insider threat in finance, the stereotype is often that high-level sysadmin, right? Does the data actually back that up?
Historically, no, actually. And this is a really crucial finding for financial institutions. The study showed that perpetrators in banking and finance often did not hold technical positions.
Really?
Yeah, the majority of fraud cases, data theft incidents, carried out by individuals in non-technical roles, customer service, loan officers, analysts, leveraging the legitimate access they had to customer accounts or proprietary data.
So, not the IT gurus necessarily.
Not usually for fraud or theft.
Yeah.
Technical staff were definitively identified as the perpetrators, mainly in the cases involving outright IT sabotage, like Archer setting a logic bomb or someone wiping servers, which confirms, you might need technical expertise for destruction, but for theft or fraud, you just need legitimate access and the intent.
And another stereotype busted. We're not talking about shadowy figures working late at night in dimly lit server rooms.
Far from it, actually. Most of these incidents were executed right there at the workplace, during normal business hours, again, relying entirely on their established, legitimate access. The threat often looks exactly like everyone else sitting in the office.
Just doing their job until they're not.
Precisely. Which brings us squarely to this operational reality, the one that really has to inform all security strategy. One source even called it the first commandment of insider threat mitigation. Human factors are paramount.
The first commandment, why paramount? I mean, surely the latest AI monitoring software, the sophisticated tech, surely that trumps the human element eventually.
Well, no, it doesn't. Because even the best AI relies on the integrity of the data it's fed and the promptness of the response, both of which are dictated by humans. The research consistently finds that the vast majority of failures in prevention, detection, and mitigation are ultimately due to human behaviors, not some fundamental technological weakness. We're talking about critical delays in reporting concerning behavior.
Someone sees something but doesn't say something.
Exactly. Or successful social engineering manipulations. Or simply supervisors trusting an employee too much and failing to audit their access or activity. The security tech stack might be perfect on paper, but if a manager chooses not to report an anomaly because, oh, that's just Dave, he wouldn't do anything wrong, the system fails.
That really underscores the need for a cultural shift, doesn't it? The UK Financial Services Review you mentioned identified 5 emerging research themes that security teams really need to balance. It suggests a mature program can't just be tech-heavy, it has to be properly integrated.
Absolutely integrated. And those themes really show you the breadth required. First, behavioral studies understanding those psychological triggers we talked about, like unmet expectations.
Yeah.
Second, information security behaviors. That's about compliance, policy adherence, training effectiveness.
Those day-to-day stuff.
Right. Third, technical controls. That's your UEBA, your data loss prevention systems. Fourth, overall insider threat strategies, developing policies, management structures, response plans. And fifth, regulation ensuring everything complies with legal frameworks like GDPR. A program focused only on the tech is just fundamentally incomplete and misses too much.
Okay, so let's dive deeper into those behavioral studies. If human factors are paramount, what should managers, security teams, even colleagues be looking for? What are those observable warning signs, the precursors that might pop up during that planning phase?
Right. First, and maybe most obviously, grievances and disgruntlement. You're looking for observable signs of dissatisfaction, frequent conflicts with management or colleagues, maybe aggressive behavior, or just constant vocal resentment about company decisions. It's the psychological pressure starting to manifest outwardly.
Makes sense. What's second?
Second, signs of vulnerability. This is where personal life issues start bleeding into the workplace. Things like noticeable isolation or withdrawal from team activities, maybe observe issues with substance abuse, or even a pattern of working highly unusual or out-of-hours shifts. Now, that last one can be tricky. Sometimes it's dedication, but sometimes it's an attempt to avoid supervision while preparing something malicious.
Right, context is key there. Third.
Third, Unexpected lifestyle changes. This is the classic one. Evidence of a sudden, unexpected, lavish lifestyle, or someone living visibly beyond their known means. Maybe they suddenly show up in a luxury car, talk about a high-cost vacation that just doesn't square with their salary.
The money has to come from somewhere.
Exactly. And this one, honestly, is staggering information sharing. In something like 61% of the malicious cases examined, individuals from more than one area of the insider's life think a friend, a family member, maybe a colleague actually knew about the insider's intentions or their plans beforehand.
61%. That plan wasn't some perfectly kept secret then.
Not at all. In the majority of cases, someone else knew something. And fifth, violation of policy. This is often the technical precursor you see before the main event. Things like unauthorized access attempts, trying to get into systems they shouldn't, maybe unauthorized copying or downloading of large amounts of data, or just flagrant, repeated violations of existing IT and data management policies.
Hold on, that 61% figure, that demands a bit more thought. If over half of these malicious insiders tell someone about their plans, why are organizations still getting caught flat-footed so often? Why isn't that information getting to the security team or HR?
That is the absolute critical dilemma of the human factor, isn't it?
Yeah.
The information often doesn't surface for a few key reasons. The person who was told might feel this intense, maybe misplaced sense of loyalty to the insider.
Don't want to betray a friend.
Right, or peer pressure within a team to stay silent. Or, and this is a huge one, simple fear of retaliation. Maybe the organization's official whistleblowing channel is seen as ineffective or worse, dangerous. If I report my friend and either nothing happens or somehow they find out it was me, well, my career could be over.
Yeah, that's a real concern.
It really highlights that intervention has to be cultural. It relies on having reporting mechanisms that are not just accessible, but genuinely trustworthy and perceived as safe.
But, okay, actively monitoring for these behaviors is inherently tricky, isn't it? Especially with all the ethical and legal implications, particularly around mental health. You can't just assume that because someone seems disgruntled, they're automatically a threat.
Absolutely not. That's a dangerous assumption. Any behavioral monitoring must adhere to strict guidelines. It has to be purposeful. You need a legitimate reason. It has to be proportionate. You can't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. And it has to be strictly lawful, especially under privacy regimes like GDPR and considering UK employment law, which rightly emphasizes accommodating mental health issues.
So over-aggressive monitoring could be illegal or harassment.
Easily. And the sources really highlight this difficult public health dilemma that organizations have to navigate carefully.
Which is?
The critical point is most mental health conditions are emphatically not indicators of an insider threat. Not at all. However, if the stigma around discussing financial stress or anxiety or depression is too high within the company culture,
People won't seek help.
exactly, employees will be deterred from using things like employee assistance programs, EAPs, even if they desperately need support. And that inaction, paradoxically, can worsen their condition. And that in a very small minority of cases, that could increase their vulnerability to potentially becoming an insider threat down the line. It's a delicate balance. Organizations really need to prioritize offering support over immediately jumping to sanctions.
Support first. Always.
Ideally, yes.
Okay, so given that the human factor is paramount, also ethically complex, maybe even legally risky to police too aggressively, we absolutely have to lean heavily on robust technological safeguards as well. So let's pivot back to the technical landscape. What's the malicious insider's biggest advantage when they decide to exploit technology? And what's the primary type of tool designed to catch them?
Well, the insider's advantage is, quite simply, their legitimate access. It's pure and simple. They don't need to hack through a firewall. They've already got a key card, a password. They walk right through the front door, digitally speaking. They often already know exactly where the valuable stuff is. The critical IP, the sensitive customer data. They know where the systems might be weak, how the existing controls are configured. And that knowledge allows them to bypass many traditional defenses that are really designed for external attackers.
Right, defenses looking outwards, not inwards.
Exactly. So to counter this specific threat, we rely heavily on tools like user and entity behavior analytics, usually shortened to UEBA.
UEBA. That seems to be the technical heart of modern insider threat programs. Can you break down how it goes beyond just simple rule-based alerts like Bob accessed the finance drive?
Yeah, UEBA is essential precisely because it deals with complexity and nuance. Its core function isn't just flagging known bad behaviors based on fixed rules. Instead, it aims to establish a sophisticated baseline of what constitutes normal behavior for every single user and even system entities on the network.
Okay, a baseline of normal.
Right. Then it uses machine learning algorithms, often quite complex ones, to identify anomalous behavior. It looks for subtle outliers, nonlinear patterns that a human analyst just staring at logs or a simple firewall rule would almost certainly miss.
Give me an example.
Okay, sure. Let's say you have a system administrator who normally accesses certain sensitive customer databases, but only during business hours, maybe only on Tuesday afternoons for routine maintenance. UEBA learns this pattern. Now, if that same administrator suddenly starts accessing terabytes of that same data at, say, 3 a.m. on a Saturday, and maybe they're doing it from an IP address nobody recognizes, the UEBA system flags that as highly anomalous, even if the access itself was technically permitted by their credentials.
Got it. So it's not just what they accessed, but the whole context, the when, the how, the where, compared to their own established normal pattern.
Exactly right. It's all about deviations from the norm. And to build that behavioral profile, these systems have to crunch just immense volumes of activity logs. We're talking about basically every digital footprint an employee leaves.
Like what kind of logs?
Oh, everything. Log on activity times, locations, success failure, device used, email usage, who are they emailing externally? Are there sudden spikes in attachment sizes or volume? HTTP activity, what websites are they visiting? File activity, huge one. What files are they opening, copying, writing to, deleting? How many? And device usage, like suddenly plugging in an unauthorized USB drive, all of it gets ingested.
Wow, that's a lot of data. I remember the research also mentioned some really cutting-edge, almost futuristic ideas for verifying identity. Things like using biometrics by monitoring how someone moves their mouse cursor. Is that stuff actually practical yet?
It's fascinating research, definitely. There are experimental studies looking into that. Researchers have found some potential links. The idea being that someone trying to conceal malicious activity or maybe even just telling a lie might exhibit measurably different mouse cursor movement patterns, perhaps due to stress or increased cognitive load.
Huh. Micro movements revealing intent.
Potentially. But the practical hurdles right now are pretty significant. First, you need a massive amount of very specific user data to reliably train the AI model for that kind of analysis in a live operational setting. That's hard to get.
And the privacy implications.
Exactly. Second, and probably more importantly, the ethical and privacy issues around monitoring something that granular, literally how someone moves their hand, are immense. It's highly unlikely these methods would be usable in heavily regulated environments like financial services anytime soon, not without huge policy shifts and probably explicit informed employee consent, which might be hard to get.
Okay, so we stick with UEBA analyzing logs for now. But even the best UEBA system can be defeated if the organization has some fundamental failures in its technical processes, right? Let's come back to that access path dilemma. That was the core reason Ian Archer, in our case study, was able to succeed with his sabotage after being fired. What exactly defines an access path, and why is forgetting about one so incredibly dangerous?
Right, an access path is basically just a sequence. A sequence of one or more access points could be logins, system credentials, special privileged rights that, when used together, lead to a critical system or sensitive data.
Like a chain of keys.
Sort of, yeah. And the inherent danger, especially in organizations that go through rapid growth or process changes or mergers and acquisitions, is that critical access paths often get forgotten, or they get shared informally and never revoked, or they simply never get audited properly. They fall through the cracks.
Let's trace Archer's path again, just to illustrate this failure clearly. Because the company genuinely thought they were secure after they terminated him?
They absolutely did. They believed they were secure because they followed the standard procedure. They disabled his known primary user account, his main login.
Standard.
But Archer still managed to launch his attack after termination because he exploited two forgotten, essentially unknown access paths. Path number one. He knew a shared password, a password for his former coworker, James Allen. Apparently, Allen had shared it months earlier for some minor project collaboration and then promptly forgot he'd ever shared it. The account was still active, Allen still worked there, and crucially, it still had the necessary privileges for Archer to plant his logic bomb.
Wow. So a simple breakdown in that basic no shared accounts policy, which sounds simple, but let's be honest, gets circumvented all the time for convenience.
All the time, exactly. And path number two was even more insidious. Archer had secretly planted a dormant backdoor account, an account with maximum administrator privileges right on the main machinery server months before he was even fired.
A secret key he made himself.
Precisely. Since he was the original architect of the system, that account was completely unknown to the current management team, the new administrators who replaced him, or any IT auditors. So the failure points here were multiple Obsolete account management practices, a lack of diligence during that rapid growth phase, fundamentally relying on trust instead of rigorous process.
The lesson seems crystal clear then. The technical failure wasn't just the logic bomb itself, it was the organization's complete failure of memory regarding who had access to what and how. How do technical teams effectively mitigate this specific access path problem?
Well, mitigation demands relentless, continuous tracking and diligent management of every single access path. It's not a one-off task. It means ongoing, thorough account management. Verifying every new account created, tracking every shared account like Alan's, and ideally eliminating them, and crucially, immediately decommissioning or properly archiving old accounts and privileges the moment they're no longer needed.
Proactive house cleaning.
Constantly. And it connects back to UEBA too. If precursor technical activity is detected by UEBA, like an unusual attempt by Archer before he was fired, to maybe create a new suspicious user profile, the technical team needs the processes in place to rapidly trace that activity, identify the potential unknown path being created, and disable it before any termination or disciplinary action even begins.
That sounds like a significant operational commitment. This rigorous approach to technical control, implementing and maintaining sophisticated security programs, UEBA, CMAM, DLP, robust access management, it requires more than just good technology. It needs real strategic investment and deep buy-in from leadership, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. It's a foundational element of any organization's overall security maturity. And yes, it often represents a massive capital expenditure decision and an ongoing operational cost.
So for those technology leaders, the
Yeah.
CISOs, the executives listening who are focused on building those integrated risk management solutions, making those strategic program decisions, we should mention our partner, www.cisomarketplace.com. It's a resource designed specifically for aligning those crucial technical investments with your overall business risk posture.
A very useful resource for that level of strategic planning, definitely. Okay, so moving from the purely technical back towards the strategic and organizational level, CISA offers a pretty standard, sensible four-step approach for effective insider threat mitigation. Kind of ties everything together. It's 1, define the threat clearly. 2, detect and identify potential issues. 3, assess the risk accurately. And 4, manage the threat through controls and response.
Define, detect, assess, manage. Seems logical.
It is, but underlying all those procedural steps, the foundation they rest on is the organizational environment itself.
The culture. Right. This brings us back full circle to that cultural imperative you mentioned. The research seems unanimous. Technical controls are absolutely necessary, but they're just not sufficient on their own without the right environment supporting them.
Precisely. We really need to stress what one source called the sixth commandment, maybe a bit dramatic, but it makes the point. Leadership and organizational culture at every level are absolutely key.
The sixth commandment.
Yeah, a positive cybersecurity culture. One where security is seen as everyone's responsibility and support is available is proven not only to reduce both insider and external security threats, but also, interestingly, to concurrently improve employee satisfaction and engagement.
That's a crucial link. Happy employees are safer employees, in a way.
There's definitely a correlation. The analysis consistently shows that if employees feel their contribution is genuinely valued, if their input is sought and listened to, they are vastly more likely to actually buy into the security culture. They'll follow policies, they'll report concerns willingly, rather than seeing security rules as just some external, burdensome imposition from management that they need to find ways around.
Okay, if culture is that central, who holds the most sway? Who's the biggest influence on shaping that day-to-day culture? Many listeners might immediately think, oh, it's the CISO, or maybe the CEO setting the tone from the top.
That assumption, while understandable, is often incorrect, according to the research we reviewed for this deep dive. The single biggest influence on the daily culture experienced by most employees, it's their immediate frontline supervisor or manager.
Really? Not the execs.
Think about it. They're the ones with the most frequent contact. They assign daily work, they provide performance feedback, they manage stress levels within the team, they handle minor grievances. They are the face of the organization for most staff.
That makes sense.
Therefore, organizations need to seriously prioritize people skills. Things like active listening, demonstrating emotional intelligence, genuine mentoring, building trust. They need to value these skills at least as much as, if not more than, purely technical skills when promoting people into supervisory roles.
So promote the good listeners, not just the best coders.
Essentially, yes. Because that shift helps directly mitigate some of those psychological drivers we discussed earlier, like unmet expectations. A good supervisor can provide effective human intervention before things escalate.
That completely reframes the whole preventative framework, focusing it much more on middle management. Okay, let's try to outline the key proactive mitigation measures recommended, especially for those high-stakes entities like in the financial services sector. Let's synthesize these human and technical needs.
Right. We can group the essential measures, pulling from the sources, maybe by
Mm,
theme.
mm.
First, behavioral measures. Organizations absolutely must invest seriously in creating that positive, supportive cybersecurity culture we talked about. Practically, this means establishing free, easily accessible employee assistance programs, EAPs. And these EAPs need to be comprehensive, covering mental health, general well-being, and crucially, offering financial counseling and support.
Addressing that key stressor directly.
Exactly. And alongside that, offering confidential, truly effective speak-up or whistleblowing services. You need a trusted channel to capture that potential 61% of known intentions we discussed earlier. People need to feel safe reporting concerns.
Got it. What's next?
Second, information security behavior. This is about making sure you have robust, regular, and mandatory education and awareness programs, not just tick box exercises, but genuinely engaging training. Also, setting crystal clear policies, acceptable use, data privacy, consequences for violations, and crucially, being transparent about internal security monitoring.
Transparency again.
Yes. Employees who understand what data is being collected about their activity and why it's necessary for security are generally much more likely to accept it and comply with policy rather than feeling spied upon unjustly.
Right. Transparency builds trust, which reduces that temptation to bypass controls because you feel unfairly targeted.
Absolutely. Okay, third theme, insider threat strategies.
Yeah.
Here, the foundational technical rule always must be adopting the principle of least privilege access.
Only give access that's strictly needed for the job.
Not a bite more. If an employee can do their job perfectly well without access to a critical system or sensitive data set, they must not have that access, period. Beyond that baseline, organizations need to conduct regular insider threat landscape reviews and maturity assessments, understand their specific risks. And finally, consider more sophisticated segmentation of the workforce.
What does that mean, segmentation?
It means applying additional, perhaps stricter controls to specific high-risk populations. For example, maybe implementing mandatory gardening leave for departing employees in critical roles, or removing external email access for certain groups, or enhanced monitoring for those with access to the most sensitive data. Tailoring controls to risk.
Makes sense. Okay, all this preparation, all these policies and controls, they all lead up to that final, often most critical human process, the termination, or even just a demotion procedure. This seems like the moment of maximum risk, right? The potential catalyst for that logic bomb, like Archer's, to actually be activated.
It is absolutely the point of maximum execution risk. Organizations must have a clear, well-documented, and regularly practiced process for handling departures, especially involuntary ones. The absolute core rule, the one I assemble completely failed on, is that all access paths, all privileges, shared accounts, system authorizations linked to that individual must be fully disabled or updated before the person is actually notified of their demotion or termination.
Access off first.
Access off first. The ideal process usually involves the security IT team disabling all technical access, then updating role-based access levels across all relevant systems, and only then does HR get involved to actually deliver the news to the individual. Sequence matters enormously here.
But what if the organization hasn't done that diligent tracking of access paths we talked about? What if they suspect there might be unknown paths, like Archer's secret backdoor account?
Then, frankly, they face a terrifying dilemma. If an organization has been lax in tracking access paths, if their account management is messy, they may literally find that the very moment they schedule that termination meeting, it's already too late.
Because the insider anticipates it.
Exactly. A disgruntled insider who suspects termination is imminent might execute their planned attack before the HR meeting even begins. The organization has to realize, if the underlying technical access controls aren't rigorous and up to date, then the human termination process, no matter how well-intentioned, is inherently flawed and risky.
That's a sobering thought. What about HR's role throughout this whole life cycle? They're often seen primarily as the administrators of the termination process, but clearly they're critical much earlier in the prevention stage too.
Oh, HR is absolutely crucial across the entire spectrum. In the prevention phase, they play a key role in defining job responsibilities clearly. They use performance reviews not just to evaluate, but to properly set and sometimes adjust employee expectations directly mitigating that risk of unmet expectations we keep coming back to.
Managing expectations proactively.
Right. Furthermore, HR should be the champion for those positive intervention strategies, like promoting the EAPs. The research strongly warns against organizations resorting to immediate sanctions or punishments just because behavioral precursors are observed. Punishing an employee for showing signs of stress or disgruntlement might actually backfire spectacularly.
How so?
It could just increase their resentment, confirm their negative view of the organization, and potentially push them directly towards deciding on a malicious act. Intervention, support, understanding that should always be the first resort, not immediate sanction.
Intervention, not sanction. Got it. Finally, let's touch on vetting. We know initial background screening is critical when hiring, but the sources seem to stress that it's fundamentally insufficient on its own for addressing the long-term insider threat. Why is that?
That is perhaps one of the most sobering findings in all the research. The evidence is overwhelming. Most individuals who become spies or malicious insiders actually enter their employment with zero malicious intent whatsoever.
They were good hires initially.
Often, yes. There are good employees who, later in their tenure, develops severe problems. Maybe those financial needs we discussed,
Yeah.
perhaps family crises, health issues, or maybe escalating grievances with management that festered over time. They changed. Therefore, continuous vetting, or at least periodic rescreening, is essential throughout the entire employment life cycle, not just at the point of hire.
It's not a one-and-done check.
Not at all. And for organizations specifically in the UK financial services sector, the sources highlight a powerful proactive deterrent they can use, leveraging relevant law enforcement powers, including the ability to proactively load details of confirmed internal fraud cases onto the National CF's database.
Ah, the fraud prevention database. How does that help as a deterrent?
Well, knowing that confirmed internal fraud will be shared across the industry, potentially impacting future employment prospects in the sector, acts as a significant check. It raises the personal stakes considerably for someone contemplating abusing their access. It's not just an internal company matter anymore. It has wider, longer-term consequences.
Right, it adds another layer of consequence beyond just losing the current job.
Exactly. Hashtag outro.
Okay, we have covered a huge amount of ground today, touching on two immense and really inseparable dimensions of the insider threat problem. On one side, we've got the human imperative, really understanding those complex psychological triggers, from unmet expectations fueled by career disappointments to severe financial drivers. And recognizing the necessary response involves fostering a positive, supportive culture, crucially championed by frontline supervisors equipped with genuine people skills.
And then on the other side, there's the inescapable technical and strategic necessity. Implementing advanced monitoring tools like UEBA, yes, but also strictly adopting that principle of least privilege access and, critically, rigorously managing every single access path, especially during that high-risk termination sequence. As we've said, there really is no single silver bullet here. It's an ongoing integrated effort that demands continuous investment, attention, and adaptation.
Before we wrap up, one thing that really stood out from our discussion was how frequently these insiders rely on access paths that are basically forgotten or simply unknown to current management, those shared accounts that were never revoked, legacy backdoors from previous admins, non-decommissioned privileges from old projects. These really are like ticking technical time bombs hidden within the system.
They absolutely are. So perhaps here's a provocative thought for you, our listener, to take away and consider about your own environment. If your organization tends to rely more on trust and convenience rather than on rigorous, consistent technical process and audit, how many of those forgotten paths might exist right now, sitting dormant inside your systems, just waiting for some precipitating event, maybe a big round of layoffs, a critical promotion denial that hits someone hard, or a sudden personal financial crisis, waiting for that trigger to potentially turn a previously trusted employee into a truly catastrophic insider threat?
That is a sobering thought to end on indeed. A truly comprehensive security strategy needs both the people and the technology elements working seamlessly together, constantly reinforcing each other. We really want to thank our partners for helping us explore this complex landscape today. For those listening who are perhaps drawn to build a career focusing on that human side of security, intervention, and culture, do visit www.securitycareers.help.
And for the technology leaders, the CISOs, the strategists out there seeking those integrated risk management solutions, looking at technical control implementation and strategic program building, check out the resources available at www.cisomarketplace.com. Please join us next time for another deep dive.